You want some back? Well, I know we'll do that.
So it's a consultant to look at. Yeah. So that our consultant is hired to see how things. So senior is the consultant, so we met with them and they're going to meet with our staff and describe how we do our work. Each step of it. See if we're going to get it from the solution right. Doing that meeting. Yeah, and even consistency. The ultimate goal is just to try to relieve some of the stress for them. Eliminated or do it a little bit better. It is not because this is double heat. Yeah, exactly. They have some experience with waves from other areas and maybe good advice. Also, that was the what you call it. Oh, that's so why I think PGP is not stick with the stop. Yeah, it hasn't been brought up. It's going to get what we do, and we had one in the So is it Roger's or is it Roger's with the lead? We're probably more the ones they contact.
They're the top people. Yes. They're the top people. You see a military.
Alrighty, well, good morning, everyone. It is just past 9:30, and we have a quorum. I'd like to begin. Are there any declarations for conflict of interest from members of EYCC? Seeing none, I will now take a motion to confirm the minutes from February 5th, 2020. Right here, so moved by Councillor Holliday. All those in favor? That is approved. Are there any petitions at this time? Seeing none, we will now go through items on the agenda. So, starting off, EY 14.1, preliminary report, 4916 to 4946 Dundas Street West, and 4-16 Burnhamthorpe Road, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. This is Councillor Grimes' ward, so Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, I'll move the recommendation on behalf of Councillor Grimes.
So moving staff recommendations, all those in favor? That carries. Moving on to EY 14.2 preliminary report, 900 to 940 to East Mall, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application. Councillor Holliday.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendations with a small amendment, and I'll read that very quickly for the committee. It would be in addition to request the Director Community Planning, Etobicoke York District to include Toronto Public Health in the circulation for comments with emphasis on aircraft, highway, and transportation-related noise and air quality.
Okay, thank you. And Rosemary, that doesn't have to go up on the screen. It's good. Okay, so on the amendment, all those in favor? That carries. And on the item, all in favor? That carries. Moving on to EY 14.3 preliminary report, 20 Wallasey Avenue zoning bylaw amendment application. This is in Councillor Perutz's ward, and it'll be Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, so I do have a motion that's on the screen on behalf of Councillor Perruzza.
Okay, so the motion is on the screen. Direct staff to schedule a community consultation.
Yeah.
Provision of the light. So goes the applicant. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Item as amended, carried. EY 14.4 preliminary report 1821 to 1823 and 1831 Weston Road zoning bylaw amendment application. Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, I do have a motion. Staff put it on the screen.
Okay, the motion is on the screen. Okay, all those in favor? That carries. Motion as amended. All in favor? Carried. Moving on to EY 14.5, assumption of services, registered plan 66M to 2528, 4750 Eglinton Avenue West, National Homes, Eglinton Incorporated. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
Moving staff recs. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. EY 14.6, temporary road closing of Islington Avenue and parking regulation amendments for the 2020 Canadian Open. That will be held for a presentation. We'll hold on Councillor Holiday's name. Moving on to EY 14.7, always stop control, King George's Road and Grenview Boulevard northeast intersection. This is in Councillor Grimes' word, so Councillor Nunziata on behalf of Councillor Grimes.
Yes, I'll move the recommendation on behalf of Councillor Grimes.
Moving staff recommendations, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. EY 14.8, always stop control, Thurodale Avenue and Duckworth Street. Councillor Nunziata.
Move staff recommendation.
Move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. EY 14.9, traffic calming poor results, Arrowsmith Avenue between Keele Street and Amesbury Drive. Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, I do have a motion.
I am against it. I live on Arrowsmith Avenue.
Oh, sir, would you like to depute against that? Would you like to speak on this item?
Ask me a question and I.
This isn't the appropriate time, but if you would like to make a deputation on the item, we can hold the item down.
Yes.
Yes, you would like to speak to committee on it? Okay. So we will hold for a deputation on EY 14.9. Moving on to EY 14.10, traffic calming poor results, Leicester Avenue between Keele Street and Richardson Avenue. Councillor Nunziata.
Yes, I do have a motion
Okay.
on the screen.
So the motion is on the screen. Okay. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? That is carried. Moving on to EY 14.11, parking regulation amendment, Dayton Avenue. Councillor Grimes, so Councillor Nunziata on behalf of Councillor Grimes.
Yes, on behalf of Councillor Grimes, I'd like to defer this item to the next meeting.
Okay, moving deferral. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. EY 14.12, parking regulation amendments, Lakeshore Boulevard West near Brown's Line in Councillor Grimes' ward. So Councillor Nunziata on behalf of Councillor Grimes.
Yes, I'll move the recommendation on behalf of Councillor Grimes.
Moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. EY 14.13, amendment to parking regulation, Strathburn Boulevard. This is in Councillor Perutz's ward, so Councillor Nunziata on behalf of Councillor Perruzza.
Move the recommendation.
Moving staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. EY 14.14, installation removal of on-street accessible parking spaces, Etobicoke District, February 2020. Councilor Nunziata.
Move the recommendation.
Move staff recommendations. All those in favor? That carries. EY 14.15, status update, Mimico Transportation Management Plan in Councillor Grimes' ward. Councillor Nunziata.
Move the recommendation.
Move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. EY 14.16, traffic safety on Burnhamthorpe Road in Councillor Grimes' area. Councillor Nunziata.
Move the recommendation.
Move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And then EY 14.17, appointments and removals from the Eglinton Hill Business Improvement Area Board of Management. Councillor Nunziata.
Move the recommendation.
Move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. So that brings us through to, we will be going to EY 14.6. Is that correct, Rosemary? This is temporary road closing of Islington Avenue and parking regulation amendments, 2020 Canadian Open. Looking for Mr. Crawford. Excellent. Right here. Okay, so we're just going to do just a quick recess. I need, yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Crawford, for coming in. I understand you have a presentation.
Yes.
So we will turn the floor over to you, and there may be questions after.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the council, for having us here today. My name is Brian Crawford. I'm the tournament director for the RBC Canadian Open and an employee of Golf Canada. I've distributed a printed package for you as well that just covers the slides that we have here. I won't cover everything in this slide deck in its entirety. I'll leave it for you to review. Covers some of the highlights of the report that you've received previously. So I just wanted to share a little bit about what and who Golf Canada is and what the RBC Canadian Open is really all about. As the organizing body of golf in this country, our responsibility is to govern the sport and its growth in our country. We're a not-for-profit and a charitable foundation with 10 provincial member associations, over 320,000 members, and over 1,400 clubs, such as St. George's, that are members of the organization. We're also recognized as a member of Sport Canada and the Canadian Olympic Committee. What do we do? Well, in addition to hosting the RBC Canadian Open, we also host the CP Women's Open, a professional championship in the LPGA Tour. We run high performance and athlete development. We run countless junior programs, member services, golf in schools programming that's in 4,000 schools across the country, including many here in the GTA. We run a Golf for the Cure program that raises millions of dollars every year. We administer the rules and amateur status, handicapping, those sorts of pieces, and manage one of the largest archives of golf history and memorabilia in the world. So what is the RBC Canadian Open? The RBC Canadian Open is actually the third oldest golf tournament in the world after only the US Open and the Open Championship in Britain. So we have played 111 playings of this championship. Predominantly, it has existed here in the Greater Toronto Area and in Ontario, and this will be the 6th hosting at St. George's Golf and Country Club, which last hosted the event in 2010. In addition to being a part of the PGA Tour, a professional golf championship, it is also our national open here in Canada. So it's the championship for Canada and really the opportunity for Canadians to get it to play on the professional tour and make their way into becoming professional golfers. Players gain entry through their tour status, so those that are on the tour regularly, of which we have 9 Canadians, currently a record for Canada, that are actively on the tour. And we have a qualifying process and exemption process of which other Canadians, including amateurs, have the opportunity to qualify. Last year we had 26 Canadians in the field, which was a record for the Canadian Open. In addition to it being a golf tournament, it is really now a sport and entertainment festival that features food and music, as well as numerous other activations and programming, and really a celebration of sport in our community. We were very pleased to have record results last year in 2019 in virtually every category that we track, and really saw an incredible growth for the event, and in addition to a real legacy out of the event. So who takes part? 156 players and their caddies is the field. Over 120,000 attendees, 1,400 hospitality clients, 1,800 volunteers last year. We will surpass 2,000 volunteers this year, 60 plus staff, over 30 stakeholders, dozens of suppliers, a television audience of over 2 billion with a B households around the world, and millions of engagements on social media. So it is a world-class sports and entertainment property and event here in our country. The economic impact of the Open is $82 million here in Canada, the vast majority of which is in Ontario and felt right here in the GTA or the host community that hosts it on an annual basis. But perhaps more important than the economic impact for the event is really the charitable impact of the event. On an annual basis, we raise over $2 million of true cash charity impact. And the first benefactor of that is the Golf Canada Foundation. As I mentioned, they do a number of things, including scholarship programs and youth programs, the Golf in Schools program that they support. And then community organizations from service groups like the Knights of Columbus to local schools and churches and those sorts of organizations that we work with to either use their facilities or provide some sort of service to the Canadian Open. So a true legacy impact in the community that extends beyond golf. Of course, being a golf organization, we're driving participation in our sport, which is truly the only sport that's a sport for life. It is a sport that ultimately we are seeking to make Canada a better place and a healthier community, and this is the flagship event for achieving those goals. So that being said, the main part of our desires pertaining to this council is around the transportation plan and the road closures, all of which are in the package that you've received today and the previous report that was submitted. I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has about any of those specific items or anything else to do with the RBC Canadian Open.
All right, thank you very much, sir. So any members of the committee have questions?
Yeah, just a
Councilman
question.
Jack.
So what's being requested in the recommendation is to close Islington from Eglinton to the Kingsway, right? So from June 1st to June 19th?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So that would be 7 days a week, like permanently closed?
Yeah, for the full duration of the 19 days, from the Monday to the Friday. 3 weeks later, I think 11:59 is our current planned time to end the road closure. Perhaps earlier, the faster we're able to tear everything down and move out.
So I would assume, I will ask the question to staff, then the traffic will be going to, I don't know what will happen with the traffic there. I guess I'll ask city staff on that. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Holiday.
Thanks for talking to us today, Mr. Crawford. So just to confirm, the two asks of eventually City Council, but Community Council right now, is to authorize the closure of Islington Avenue and to enact some parking regulations. Am I correct? The parking regulations are there to prohibit visitors from parking in the neighborhood and causing disruption. And is that something that you learned from in the past? Because there's an awful lot of bylaws and stuff in the report, so why would we go through that amount of trouble?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that is a really priority one, is to make sure that the local community surrounding the club doesn't get overwhelmed with people parking throughout the neighborhood. We want to direct them to the dedicated and established parking areas for the event. As you can imagine, with that many guests attending, there's obviously lots of parking that needs to be met. And also, to ensure the flow of traffic on those community streets, and enacting the bylaws related to parking and standing and stopping and so forth. So we've enacted very similar protocols back in 2010 here. We've expanded the reach and breadth of it this year to address some of the shortcomings of the plan in 2010, and also some of the learnings we've had previously in other communities like Hamilton, as an example, Oakville, where we've hosted previously. And so it definitely is the best way to kind of mitigate impact on the local residents who live close to the course. I, of which am a resident of the community right next to the Hamilton Golf and Country Club, where we were last year, so kind of experience it firsthand, and how well the program actually works in reality.
So closing Islington Avenue is a big deal. It's obviously a big deal for the community that I represent, because it's right in the middle of it, and we know that those cars will have to reroute. But it's going to affect my colleagues here, because the wards that they represent are adjacent. I mean, Councillor Ford, this will be literally your residence. Can you give us some assurance that you've shaved this down to the minimum, and that you're not just closing it because you can, but there's real purpose in why you're doing this? And I noticed that it goes on for a week after the tournament. And can you give us some assurance that you're going to get out of there as fast as you can?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the event comes obviously a large entourage and a lot of need for kind of the operational side of things. So the road closure will actually accommodate a couple things. Those are familiar with the course obviously know that the clubhouse is on the opposite side of the course itself. So kind of first and foremost, human traffic between the clubhouse and the golf course is kind of one of the main needs. But what the road will accommodate is a couple of different things. The broadcast compound, which will actually span over 800 feet by 3 lanes. So these are the television trucks and so forth that broadcast. A catering compound that does all the catering on the course for the event in all the hospitality suites and concession stands, those sorts of pieces. The shuttle loading and unloading areas for buses, bringing people over from the parking areas as well. Infrastructure for admissions. It's a very tight footprint at St. George's, so infrastructure for admissions will be constructed right on the road, right in front of the golf course, kind of between Ridge Valley and Princess Margaret specifically. So those are kind of the main things that will be taking place on the road. In addition, obviously, there's security measures that are required, keeping vehicular traffic away from the golf course where there's, a large number of spectators that are walking and those sorts of pieces. So we've built out a schedule that kind of will include operations every single day, kind of from the second that the road closure is in place all the way through the tournament. And then it'll be the first thing that's torn down, the minute that the tournament ends within the bylaws which we can operate and work. And ideally, we'll be out even before the Friday, but in order to get everything out, we won't need any more than the week afterwards.
I guess my last question is, I know that a lot of planning's gone on, for sure, because I've been talking to staff about it and have been in meetings. But in your estimation, have you been well challenged and scrutinized by staff, given, this is a disruption to everything in all of our agencies and our operations? Can you assure council that all these plans have been well looked over and you've been held to account by the staff and the professionals who go through this? And I know that there's even a traffic management plan attached. It's not that this is just done just for sake. Somebody's thought all this through.
Yeah, I mean, I think starting off with having a third-party company come in to do all of the traffic plans and provide all the data on traffic flow patterns and those sorts of pieces. The city departments have been fantastic. There's 24 probably, I think, that are involved in some capacity and have been involved for the last number of months, dating back to the beginning of the fall, providing the various points of feedback for the various departments for which they represent, whether it be police or fire or TTC or what have you. So I think it's been fantastic. The economic development department's been an excellent lead on making sure that all the organizations are communicating and working together and having regular meetings. I think our community consultation process went very well, and we received feedback of which we implemented, and improvements that things we maybe hadn't thought about that would improve the situation, which we were able to do as well. And we have the kind of good fortune of being able to work off of what the experience was in 2010, which was quite successful. And I think a lot of people were pleasantly surprised with how well it actually all worked, and the impact was not as dire as people maybe thought it was going in.
Okay, and I'm going to squeeze one more in. Can you give council some assurance that, this is a dynamic operation? Weather changes, things change. If something occurs that, there needs to be adjustments to traffic flow, that kind of stuff. Do you have an operations center? Do you have a team that's monitoring this? If we get feedback from a resident or there's a problem, can we work out solutions, or are we stuck?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, I think we have an extremely dynamic team. We ran into an issue a year ago with an accident that, closed a major road and kind of forced additional traffic. And our team, working with the partners in the city a year ago, were able to address that and mitigate those issues. As I mentioned, we have 6 full-time staff that work on this event, 35 staff that work on it in total, and probably 60 staff that have some small piece of it, in addition to the dozens of suppliers from third parties that manage with the road closures, security, those sorts of pieces, consultants that we have hired working on the event. So it's an extremely large operation that also includes the expertise of the PGA Tour itself, and they run these events week in and week out, and provide quite a bit of expertise as we move along each and every year.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I do have one quick question that just popped into my mind.
Sure.
Just because in North Etobicoke, we have a number of cultural festivals, which run for multiple days. And one of the approaches we take to traffic management, and I can clearly tell you've done your homework and you know what's going on here, and staff have done a good job here, but have you looked at shuttling, like doing an off-site parking lot somewhere else in the broader community and shuttling?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Here you go. So our primary off-site parking for this event will actually be the Etobicoke Hydro right-of-way. So owned by Hydro One and the Infrastructure Ontario. So we're working directly with them to utilize those lands that you can see on the map here. So that's where approximately 6,000 vehicles will park and be shuttled over to the event. I worked with a number of other smaller lots as well that will handle other kind of specific things, whether it be media or preferred parking or caddies or something like that. Parking is very, very limited when we have enough spaces to basically handle the golfers themselves. We're also working with the TTC, and we'll be running shuttle bus service from the subway station, so that it's hopefully our hope that we'll have a large percentage of attendees that will come in via public transit, working with their marketing team to actually create a marketing campaign around taking the TTC, having a golfer actually ride the TTC for the commercial would be pretty fun. Working with directly with Uber and Lyft and the other ride-sharing options to have a ride-sharing lot that is run by Uber that is directly integrated with their app, which is what we've done in the past and is done virtually at every tournament now. So there'll be a number of transportation options. A bike corral. We always do a bike corral that always gets a couple hundred bicycles. It's probably one of the best ways to come, and certainly most environmentally friendly. So there's a number of transportation options to get to the tournament itself. As we mentioned with parking, we have some kind of auxiliary and secondary parking up at Woodbine as a fallback if there's any issues, if we have a greater number of attendees, if there's torrential rains, or for some reason one of the portions of the slot become unusable. So there's a number of contingency plans in place related to parking and transportation.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. So that will conclude questions for the deputant, but I do know we have some questions for staff. Councillor Nunziata?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just wanted to ask staff what the plan is as far as rerouting the traffic during that period.
Sorry,
And
Councillor,
what
I
the
missed the
plan-
question.
what is the plan for rerouting the traffic along Islington for that period?
Okay, well, through the chair, there is a traffic management study that was conducted, and one of the key components of that is the advertisement of the closure. So they're proposing 70 different signs placed around advising residents that the road is closed. So that will hopefully result in traffic diversion. We anticipate the traffic will divert to the parallel routes. And fortunately, we do have parallel routes. We have Martin Grove, we have Kipling, we have Royal York Road. So within the traffic management plan, there'll be further conversation with the traffic consultant hired by Gulf Canada to see if traffic signal timing adjustments are required. There'll also be pay duty officers at a couple key locations. The City of Toronto will be putting cameras at certain intersections as well to monitor it remotely. And what we did previously when we closed the road in 2010, we were actively on site watching the traffic and making signal timing adjustments if required. And fortunately, last time we didn't have to do it. Traffic naturally flowed fairly well.
So just one question on your comment about cameras. What sort of cameras?
We have
like the city of Toronto is putting these cameras up?
Yeah, we have the cameras that are already installed at intersections such as Martin Grove and Eglinton, but we also have a portable camera remotely that we can place at an intersection. So we're going to figure out the most critical location to place that camera, and that can be then monitored remotely so we can see what traffic looks like 24 hours a day.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Thank
Yeah,
you, Bruce.
Councillor Holiday?
I'm going to ask Dan in a moment too. This is probably impacts the residents that I represent, less my colleagues, but maybe you should know about this. There's a whole bunch of bylaw changes here regarding parking. And I do note that part of this program are 2 concerts on Friday and Saturday night, which will attract a lot of attendees. I wondered if you could just highlight the special regulations that we're putting in on parking to try to ensure that people don't plug up the streets. And maybe you could offer a little bit of comment about what you saw as a city professional when this occurred in 2010. So it was 10 years ago.
Sure.
A similar event occurred, and what did we take from that and translate to the plan this time? Yeah,
through the chair, the one thing that is different for this year's event than last year's event is, as the councillor mentioned, there's the concert series. So it has resulted in us expanding the duration of the parking regulations a little bit further into the evening to hit those 2 concerts. We've put in more no stopping regulations this year than we did previously. Again, in consultation with the police, it was decided that this was an important thing to do to aid in their enforcement. And we're also going to be talking to the police about placement of signs, again, to aid in some of the enforcement. So we do have some history here. We've expanded the area, and we've got 122 streets this time around that will be signed by Gulf Canada to different degrees depending on as required. And it'll be an active area that we'll be placing signs as required, and the police will be monitoring it all the time.
Bruce, are you confident in the traffic management plan that you've seen? Like this is going to work? And I know it's not going to be business as usual. We can't expect that. It's a closure of a major arterial, but do you think it's going to work?
Yes, the traffic management plan I'm confident in. There is always unforeseen things that may happen, and that's, I think, where we're going to have to be adaptive. And staff are on board and staff are prepared to be adaptive and work for this event to make sure that if something does happen, we're prepared.
Okay, thanks very much. If I could ask a couple of questions of economic development.
Morning.
Good morning. Dan, you're from EDC.
I am.
And it's really for the benefit of my colleagues, anyone listening. Could you just highlight the breadth and degree of planning that you've spearheaded on this? Mm-hmm. This report is very focused on just, a couple of traffic management things, but this really is a major event in the city with a lot of attendees. And, can you assure councillors and the public that are listening that, everyone's on board with this, including the police, emergency services, TTC, all the different agencies and departments. And I know that flows through you, and that there's a planning table on something that's this large, because we want to make sure it goes smoothly as a city. That's our job.
Yeah, absolutely. As you indicated, the focus was on the road closure insofar as the impact, as we've identified here, to the neighbors. And so that began in early conversations started earlier on in 2019, but really in earnest in November of 2019. There was a meeting that Transportation held at the November 29th, I believe, or 28th of 2019, which brought all the key stakeholders to the table. We had all emergency services, representation not only of the public order office with police, but also 22 divisions, so they're working in tandem on that. Obviously fire, EMS, transportation, municipal licensing has come to the table, obviously, solid waste management. So every stakeholder who's within the city who's going to be impacted within that time frame and within that geography has been at the table. We've had working group meetings kicking off in February. So every month we're getting together, addressing any of the top end priorities and reprioritizing, as has been indicated in a moment by moment way with this event. Prioritizing and being agile and reprioritizing is exactly what we need to be looking at. And all of the stakeholders are being heard and have an opportunity to speak to that.
Dan, you've been involved in other large event plans. I mean, that's what your office does. Pride Week comes to mind, really big in the city of Toronto. And you have experience with various people that have to plan through these things well in advance. Are you feeling confident, and have you seen an appropriate level of investment both from the proposal that from Golf Canada and from staff within the city? Are you feeling confident that all of the right work is being done and the right amount of effort is being done on this? Knowing that it's evolving and it is a project and an event, but are you seeing things to date that make you feel satisfied and able to stand behind this?
Yeah, I've spent the last 11 years working with the City Cultural Events Group doing Nuit Blanche. And so my work in terms of doing significant road closures in the downtown area and in that context leads me to sort of see this process to be very robust, very integrated, very inclusive of all of the groups who will have to be responsive throughout that 90-day period.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Before moving on to speakers on this item, I just want to recognize Dan McLean, who is with us today, a Toronto District School Board trustee for Etobicoke Centre. Welcome to Etobicoke York Community Council.
I'll also add that the school board is a big partner in this because of the relationship with Richview Collegiate as one of the cooperative venues in this. It's not just the golf course, but the school site is involved. So,
Does he want to make a presentation?
Dan, you're not here to speak. You're just okay. Yeah. You're welcome to any time, but just make sure we recognize you. And I think it's worth noting the partnership from different parts of government that have made this occur, and the school board is one of them.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you. So moving on to speakers on this item, Councillor Holiday.
I will speak just briefly, just to thank everyone for their hard work, for coming and speaking today, and offering this community council assurance that a high level of planning has gone into it. I know that Golf Canada has shouldered a lot of this work, and they are the people that are proposing this. But I also will recognize the level of commitment from city staff in recognition that this is a really big deal for Etobicoke Centre, and my colleagues here, it's going to be a big deal for you too, because of the interconnectivity of the west end of the city. I think everyone will know about it when a venue of this size occurs in central Etobicoke. There's, a concert being held, and a lot of planning has to go in to make sure that it goes smoothly, that the impacts to the neighborhood are minimal, but also that we're thinking about what legacy may be left behind. And I know that Mr. Crawford didn't talk about that, but that's part of the equation. What does the community get out of this? And, there will be some improvements and some benefits that come out of it. Not to mention just focus and celebration of golf in the city. It's a popular sport. It's practiced and played by many skill levels, including duffers like me, but getting a chance to get out and exercise out in the open, it's a great sport that almost anyone can play. So I hope that brings some attention to the sport itself, encourages people to get out and play, and brings some positive economic impact to our city because of the international stature of this event. And you know what? I'm glad to be involved in the planning of this, to do everything I can and make the best out of such a large event for the community. But ultimately, end of the day, we're trying to achieve, and I think we will achieve, pride in having Etobicoke Centre chosen for this event. And once again, I thank everyone involved and hope you will remain dynamic and reactive through the process so that we can make it go as smooth as possible. So thanks very much.
Excellent. Any other speakers to the item? Seeing none. So all those in favor? Oppose? That carries. Excellent. So moving on to, I believe, our last item, we will go to EY 14.8, always stop control. Oh, is it 9? Oh, thank you. I thought we didn't defer 9. Okay. So we are going to EY 14.9. My apologies. Traffic calming poll results, Arrowsmith Avenue between Keele Street and Amesbury Drive. We do have a deputant on the item. Sir, if you would like to come up. So thank you very much for joining us today, sir. You have 5 minutes, and I would just ask you to state your name for the record.
My name is Francesco Imbesi.
Excellent. Thank you.
I live
You
on
have 5 minutes.
26 Arrowsmith Avenue.
Excellent. Thank you. The floor is yours.
I feel that the street is just a small street. It's just local traffic. It's not a main intersection that goes from one main street, like Hill Street to Colford. It's just local traffic. There is a sidewalk. There is no school. And I feel it's unnecessary to spend this money, taxpayer money, for just local traffic going through the street. That's my main thing. I didn't get a chance to answer before when I was letter sent because I was on holiday in Italy and I didn't come back until late October.
Okay. Not a problem.
I know I'm too late now, but that's my expression. My
That is
feeling.
okay. You aren't late. It's the appropriate time. So thank you very much. Any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, we'll bring it into committee. Questions to staff?
No.
Speakers? Councillor Nunziata.
I have a motion.
Okay.
Okay.
And you are? Okay.
Okay.
The motion is on the screen. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the agenda. Then we have the bills. Okay, Councillor Holliday, you have a motion to introduce and enact certain bills.
I do thank you, Mr. Chair, that the Etobicoke York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws Bills 244 to 249, prepared for the March 12, 2020 meeting 14 of the Community Council, excluding Bill 247.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as bylaws? All those in favor? That carries. Councillor Nunziata, you have a motion to introduce and enact the confirming bill.
Yes, that the Etobicoke York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceeding of the Etobicoke York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 14 on March 12, 2020.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as bylaw? All those in favor? That is carried, and we'll move adjournment. Councillor Nunziata, and we are adjourned.
Good job, Mr. Chair. Thank you. You're a natural. Yeah. Rosemary, I have to sign.
Yeah.
It's a local street, a short street, it's not a main intersection going through. The problem is people parking in the street, even though it's no parking anytime. People park on both sides, and they make the street less than a lane to go through. That's where the danger is with parking, not